Welcome to our video exploring the lives and deaths of some of the greatest British monarchs in history. From the Tudors to the Stuarts and beyond, these rulers shaped the course of British history and left an indelible mark on the world. Join us as we delve into their fascinating stories, examining not only their remarkable achievements, but also the tragic and sometimes violent circumstances surrounding their deaths. From untimely illnesses to brutal assassinations, the end of their reigns were often as tumultuous as their lives. So sit back, relax, and prepare to journey through the fascinating and sometimes macabre history of the greatest British monarchs. Queen Elizabeth I, died 1603. Queen Elizabeth I, also known as the Virgin Queen, was one of the most famous monarchs in English history. She was the daughter of King Henry VIII and his second wife, Anne Boleyn, and was born in 1533. Elizabeth became queen in 1558 and ruled England for 44 years until her death in 1603. Elizabeth's reign was characterized by stability and prosperity, and she is remembered for her intelligence, political savvy, and determination. She was a strong leader who guided England through a period of religious upheaval, economic expansion, and military conflicts. Elizabeth's death was a result of natural causes. In her final years, she suffered from a number of health problems, including a skin condition that caused her to wear heavy makeup and wigs. She also had a number of other ailments, including arthritis, gout, and frequent headaches. In the months leading up to her death, Elizabeth's health began to decline rapidly. She was bedridden for several weeks and was attended by a team of doctors, who prescribed various treatments to ease her symptoms. Despite their efforts, Elizabeth's condition continued to deteriorate. On the morning of March 24, 1603, Elizabeth passed away at the age of 69. The official cause of death was recorded as blood poisoning, which was likely caused by the lead-based makeup she had been using for years. Her death marked the end of an era in English history and the beginning of a new one, as her successor, James VI of Scotland, ascended to the English throne as James I. Elizabeth's legacy lives on to this day. She is remembered as one of England's greatest monarchs, a leader who navigated her country through turbulent times and left behind a legacy of stability and prosperity. Her reign was a period of great cultural and intellectual achievement, known as the Elizabethan era, which saw the rise of Shakespeare, Marlowe, and other great writers and artists. Queen Victoria, died 1901. Queen Victoria was one of the most iconic monarchs in British history. She was born in 1819 and became Queen of the United Kingdom in 1837 at the young age of 18. Victoria's reign lasted for 63 years, making her the longest reigning monarch in British history until she was surpassed by Queen Elizabeth II in 2015. Victoria was known for her strict moral code and her devotion to her husband, Prince Albert. Together, they had 9 children, and Victoria became known as the Mother of Europe due to her children's marriages into other European royal families. Victoria's death occurred on January 22, 1901, at the age of 81. Her passing marked the end of an era, as she had been the symbol of British power and prosperity for over 6 decades. The cause of Queen Victoria's death was a cerebral hemorrhage, or bleeding in the brain. She had been in poor health for several years, suffering from arthritis, rheumatism, and other ailments. In the days leading up to her death, Victoria had been experiencing a series of headaches and dizzy spells, and she was attended by her personal physician, Dr. James Reed. Despite the efforts of Dr. Reed and other physicians, Victoria's condition continued to worsen, and she eventually slipped into a coma. She passed away in her sleep at her residence on the Isle of Wight. Victoria's death was mourned throughout the world, as she had been a beloved figure not only in Britain but also in many other countries. Her reign had seen the expansion of the British Empire, the Industrial Revolution, and significant social and political changes in Britain. Today, Victoria's legacy lives on in many ways, including the iconic era of Victorian architecture, literature, and culture. Her reign has been the subject of numerous books, films, and television shows, and she remains one of the most famous and influential figures in British history. King George III, died 1820. King George III was one of the most controversial monarchs in British history. He was born in 1738 and became King of Great Britain in 1760. George III is remembered for his long reign of 60 years, during which time he oversaw significant political and social changes in Britain. George III's reign was marked by both triumph and tragedy. He presided over Britain's victory in the 7 Years' War, which established Britain as a global superpower, but he also struggled with mental illness and was the subject of numerous political crises. George III's death occurred on January 29, 1820, at the age of 81. He had been in poor health for several years, suffering from a range of ailments, including gout, cataracts, and breathing problems. In his final years, he was largely confined to his home, and his son, the future George IV, acted as regent. The cause of King George III's death was a combination of old age and multiple health problems. His last illness began in December 1819, when he developed a fever and respiratory problems. Despite the efforts of his physicians, his condition continued to worsen, and he eventually passed away at Windsor Castle. George III's death was a significant event in British history, as it marked the end of an era. He had been the longest reigning monarch in British history at the time of his death, and his reign had seen significant political, social, and cultural changes in Britain. Today, George III is remembered for his complex personality and his struggles with mental illness. He was the subject of numerous medical treatments and therapies, including being restrained in a straitjacket and subjected to electroshock therapy. Despite the controversy surrounding his reign, George III remains an important figure in British history, and his legacy continues to be studied and debated by historians and scholars. King Henry VIII, died 1547. King Henry VIII was the second Tudor monarch to rule England, succeeding his father, King Henry VII, in 1509. Henry VIII is most famous for his 6 marriages, which resulted in the English Reformation and the establishment of the Church of England. His desire for a male heir led him to break away from the Catholic Church and marry 6 times, leading to political turmoil and religious upheaval in England. Henry VIII's first marriage was to Catherine of Aragon, which lasted for 24 years but failed to produce a male heir. He then divorced Catherine, leading to his excommunication from the Catholic Church. He went on to marry Anne Boleyn, who also failed to produce a male heir and was ultimately executed on charges of adultery and treason. His third wife, Jane Seymour, finally gave him the son he had long desired, Edward VI, but died soon after childbirth. Henry VIII went on to marry 3 more times, each marriage ending in divorce or the death of his wife. Towards the end of his life, Henry VIII suffered from a variety of health problems, including obesity, leg ulcers, and heart disease. His declining health may have been due to his unhealthy lifestyle, which included a diet rich in meat and alcohol. In January 1547, he fell into a coma and died on January 28 of that year at the age of 55. The exact cause of his death remains unknown, but some historians believe he may have died of complications from his various health issues. After his death, Henry VIII was succeeded by his young son, Edward VI, who ruled England for only 6 years before dying of an illness at the age of 15. Edward's death led to a power struggle between Henry's daughters, Mary and Elizabeth, with Elizabeth ultimately succeeding to the throne and becoming one of England's greatest monarchs. Despite the controversy surrounding his reign, Henry VIII remains one of England's most fascinating and influential historical figures. King William III, died 1702. King William III, also known as William of Orange, was born on November 4, 1650, in The Hague, Netherlands. He was the son of William II, Prince of Orange, and Mary, Princess Royal of England. William III was a prominent Dutch statesman and military leader who played a key role in the Glorious Revolution in England, which led to the overthrow of King James II and the establishment of the Protestant monarchy in England. He was also King of Scotland and Ireland and played a significant role in European politics during his reign. William III was born into a wealthy and influential family. His father, William II, was the Prince of Orange, a title that had been held by his family for centuries. His mother, Mary, Princess Royal of England, was the daughter of King Charles I of England. William III's early life was marked by political instability and conflict. When he was just 2 years old, his father died in battle against the French army, leaving his mother to raise him and his younger brother, Prince Henry. Despite his young age, William III showed an early aptitude for politics and diplomacy. He was educated by the leading scholars of his time, including the Dutch theologian Franciscus Junius and the French historian Pierre Bel. He also received military training from the Dutch statesman and soldier William of Nassau, who had been his father's mentor. In 1672, at the age of 22, William III was appointed stadtholder, or governor, of several Dutch provinces. This position gave him significant political power and influence, as well as the authority to lead the Dutch military forces. During his time as stadtholder, William III successfully defended the Netherlands against several invasions by France and other European powers. He also played a key role in negotiating the Peace of Nijmegen in 1678, which ended the Franco-Dutch War. In 1688, William III was invited by a group of English politicians to lead an invasion of England and overthrow King James II, who was widely unpopular due to his Catholicism and his attempts to increase the power of the monarchy. William III saw this as an opportunity to strengthen his position in Europe and establish a Protestant monarchy in England. He assembled a large fleet of ships and an army of over 20,000 men and landed in England on November 5, 1688. William III's invasion was largely successful, as many of James II's soldiers and supporters defected to his side. James II fled to France, and William III was declared king by the English Parliament in February 1689. He was crowned alongside his wife, Mary II, who was the daughter of James II and a staunch Protestant. As king, William III worked to establish a more limited monarchy and increase the power of Parliament. He also pursued an aggressive foreign policy, fighting wars against France and other European powers. He played a key role in the War of the Grand Alliance, which ended with the Treaty of Ryswick in 1697, and the War of the Spanish Succession, which ended with the Treaty of Utrecht in 1713. Despite his military successes and political accomplishments, William III's later years were marked by illness and declining health. He suffered from a variety of health problems, including asthma, kidney stones, and rheumatism. He also had a lifelong battle with obesity, which made it difficult for him to walk or ride a horse. In 1702, William III fell from his horse while riding in Hampton Court Park, injuring his collarbone and causing him to develop pneumonia. Despite the efforts of his physicians, his condition worsened over the next few days, and he later died. Queen Anne died 1714. Queen Anne was born on February 6, 1665, at St. James's Palace in London, England. She was the second daughter of James, Duke of York, who later became King James II of England, and his first wife, Anne Hyde. Anne was Queen of England, Scotland, and Ireland from 1702 until her death in 1714. Anne's childhood was marked by political turmoil and religious conflict. Her father, James, was a Roman Catholic, and her mother was a Protestant. When Anne was just 3 years old, her father was deposed in the Glorious Revolution, and her uncle, William III, became King of England. Despite her turbulent upbringing, Anne received a good education. She was taught by leading scholars of the time, including the poet and theologian John Dryden. She also learned several languages, including French and Latin, and was an avid reader of literature and history. In 1702, Anne became Queen of England, Scotland, and Ireland, following the death of William III. She was the last monarch of the House of Stuart and the first monarch of the House of Hanover. Anne's reign was marked by several significant events, including the War of the Spanish Succession, which began in 1701 and lasted until 1714. Anne's reign was also marked by political conflict, both at home and abroad. She faced opposition from Whig politicians who wanted to limit the power of the monarchy and strengthen the role of Parliament. She also faced challenges from foreign powers, including France and Spain, who sought to expand their territories and influence in Europe. Queen Anne's health began to decline in the early 1710s. She suffered from a variety of health problems, including gout, obesity, and poor eyesight. She also experienced several miscarriages and lost all of her children before they reached adulthood. In 1714, Anne became seriously ill with a sudden fever. Her condition worsened rapidly, and she became delirious and unable to speak. She died on August 1, 1714, at the age of 49, at Kensington Palace in London. The cause of her death is uncertain, but it is believed that she suffered from an acute attack of appendicitis or a stroke. Anne was buried in Westminster Abbey, where she was later joined by her husband, Prince George of Denmark. King Edward VII, died 1910. King Edward VII, also known as Albert Edward, was the eldest son of Queen Victoria and Prince Albert. He was born on November 9, 1841, at Buckingham Palace in London, England. Edward VII was King of the United Kingdom and the British Dominions and Emperor of India from 1901 until his death in 1910. He was the first British monarch of the House of Saxe-Coburg and Gotha, which later became the House of Windsor. Edward VII was born into a privileged and royal family, and he received a comprehensive education that prepared him for his future role as monarch. He was privately educated at home by a team of tutors, and he also studied at various schools, including the University of Edinburgh and the University of Oxford. Despite his reputation as a partygoer and socialite, Edward was a knowledgeable and cultured individual who had a keen interest in the arts and sciences. He was also an avid sportsman who enjoyed hunting, shooting, and fishing. In 1863, Edward married Princess Alexandra of Denmark, with whom he had 6 children. The couple had a happy and loving marriage, and Alexandra was a popular and respected figure in British society. Their eldest son, Prince Albert Victor, was expected to become king after Edward's death, but he died of pneumonia in 1892. Edward VII became king in 1901 after the death of his mother, Queen Victoria. He was 59 years old at the time and had waited for the throne for many years. Edward was a popular and charismatic monarch who worked hard to promote peace and stability in Europe. During his reign, Edward established close relationships with other European monarchs, particularly with his nephew, Kaiser Wilhelm II of Germany. He also played a significant role in the signing of the Entente Cordiale in 1904, which strengthened the diplomatic ties between Britain and France. In the early years of the 20th century, Edward's health began to decline. He suffered from various health problems, including bronchitis, gout, and heart disease. Despite his ill health, Edward continued to perform his duties as king, attending public events and representing Britain at international gatherings. In May 1910, Edward fell seriously ill with bronchitis, and his condition rapidly deteriorated. He was confined to his bed at Buckingham Palace and was attended by a team of doctors and nurses. On May 6, 1910, he became unconscious and was given a tracheotomy to help him breathe. His son, George V, who was then Prince of Wales, was by his bedside when he died on May 6, 1910, at the age of 68. The official cause of Edward's death was pneumonia, which had developed as a complication of his bronchitis. His funeral was held on May 20, 1910, and was attended by thousands of mourners, including many foreign dignitaries. Edward was buried at St. George's Chapel in Windsor Castle, where he was joined by his wife, Alexandra, after her death in 1925. King George VI died 1952. King George VI was the King of the United Kingdom and the British Dominions from 1936 until his death in 1952. He was born on December 14, 1895, and was the second son of King George V and Queen Mary. George VI was not initially expected to become king. His elder brother, Edward VIII, was next in line for the throne, but he abdicated in 1936, and George VI ascended to the throne. As a young man, George served in the Royal Navy during World War I, where he saw active duty in the Battle of Jutland. After the war, George worked as a civil servant and later became Duke of York. He married Elizabeth Bowes-Lyon in 1923, and the couple had two daughters, Princess Elizabeth, the future Queen Elizabeth II, and Princess Margaret. George VI became king in 1936, following the abdication of his brother, Edward VIII. He was a reluctant monarch, who had never expected to become king and who struggled with a speech impediment throughout his life. However, he was a popular and respected king who worked hard to promote peace and stability during a difficult period in British history. During his reign, George VI oversaw the country's efforts during World War II, providing morale-boosting speeches and visiting troops on the front lines. He also played a significant role in the post-war rebuilding of Britain and the establishment of the United Nations. In 1951, George's health began to decline. He was a heavy smoker, and he had suffered from several health problems throughout his life, including lung disease and circulatory issues. Despite his poor health, George continued to perform his duties as king, attending public events and representing Britain at international gatherings. On February 6, 1952, George VI died in his sleep at Sandringham House in Norfolk, England. He was 56 years old. The official cause of his death was a coronary thrombosis, which was likely caused by his smoking and other health issues. George's death was a significant loss for the British people, who had grown to love and respect their king. His eldest daughter, Princess Elizabeth, succeeded him as Queen Elizabeth II, and she has now become the longest-reigning monarch in British history. Queen Elizabeth II died 2022. Queen Elizabeth II, born on April 21, 1926, was the longest-reigning monarch in British history, having served as queen for a remarkable period of 69 years. Throughout her reign, Queen Elizabeth II worked hard to modernize the British monarchy, and in doing so, she won the hearts of people all around the world. On September 8, 2022, Queen Elizabeth II passed away peacefully at the age of 96 at her home, Windsor Castle. She had been in declining health for several months, and her death had been anticipated by many. Her passing marked the end of a chapter in British history, as well as the beginning of a new one. As news of her death spread, there was an outpouring of grief and sadness from people all around the world. World leaders, celebrities, and ordinary people all paid tribute to the Queen, acknowledging her immense contributions to the world, the British monarchy, and to the Commonwealth nations. It is difficult to overstate the impact that Queen Elizabeth II had on the world during her long reign. She was a symbol of stability, continuity, and tradition, and her presence helped to unite a country that has experienced many upheavals and changes over the years. She was also a tireless advocate for causes she believed in, from the environment to social justice to public health. As the world mourns the loss of Queen Elizabeth II, there is no doubt that her legacy will live on for many years to come. She was a remarkable woman who dedicated her life to serving her country and her people, and her impact will be felt for generations. As we conclude our exploration of the greatest British monarchs and how they died, we are left with a sense of awe at the monumental achievements and sacrifices made by these remarkable rulers. From the Tudor monarchs who transformed England into a Protestant nation, to the Stuarts who saw their reigns marked by political upheaval and civil war, each monarch left a unique and lasting legacy. And while some met tragic and violent ends, others passed peacefully, leaving behind a wealth of accomplishments that continue to shape the world we live in today. Through their triumphs and tragedies, these monarchs remind us of the power and influence of leadership, and the enduring impact that even a single life can have on history.